Hi everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. The sun was just rising over the ridge when Huyen's tiny yard turned into a mess of people, chickens, and laughter. Pots rattled in the kitchen, neighbors shouted greetings, and someone was already testing the old speaker in the corner. Today, at last, Huyen and Dee were getting married. Maya ran barefoot across the yard, holding up a crooked flower crown. "Mom, Uncle Day, look, I made this for the groom." Day stood on a stool, tying a blue sheet to make shade for guests. He grinned. "If you put that on my head, everyone will think I'm a forest fairy groom," he joked. Huyen walked out from the smoky kitchen, cheeks pink from the fire. "Forest fairy or not," she said, "as long as you don't run away before we sign the paper." Everyone nearby laughed. It had been a long road to this day, waking at dawn to dig wild yams, nights turning those roots into cakes, slowly building a small stall at the market. Their work had put food on the table and kept Maya in school. Now they were finally about to put their names side by side on a marriage certificate. "Today is our new beginning," Day murmured as he climbed down from the stool and passed close to her. He brushed her elbow, just a quick touch, but it carried years of shared struggle. "Don't make me cry before the ceremony," she warned, though her eyes were already shining. Inside the dim house, on the old wooden table, lay a white envelope with a red stamp in the corner. It had arrived yesterday afternoon with the rarely seen postman. Huyen had been too busy sweeping, cooking, and washing to care. She'd tossed it on the table, thinking she would open it later. Then the day swallowed her whole. Now her aunt bustled inside, gathering bowls. She picked up the envelope and frowned. "What's this? Another bill?" the aunt muttered. Huyen wiped her hands on a towel and glanced over. Her name wasn't on it. The neat black letters spelled out Dee's full name. The red stamp looked official in a way that made her stomach tighten. "Day," she called toward the yard, "there's a letter for you." He stepped inside, wiping his dusty hands on his pants. Letters almost never brought anything good to people like them. Usually, they meant payment deadlines or trouble. Dee took the envelope. For a moment, he just stared at the stamp. The cheerful light in his face dimmed, as if someone had turned down a lamp. "Who sent it?" Huyen tried to joke. "Maybe someone wants to gift us a house for the wedding." "Probably just old paperwork," he said quickly. "I'll look at it later. We still have so much to do." But Huyen saw his fingers tremble. "No," she said more softly. "Open it now. If it's something bad, I'd rather know before everyone arrives." Maya appeared in the doorway, hugging her flower crown to her chest. "Is it from the city?" she asked. Day swallowed, tore the envelope, and unfolded the pages inside. The room shrank around them. He read line after line, his eyes growing darker, mouth tightening. Huyen could hear the faint buzz of music testing outside and the clatter of dishes, but all of it sounded distant now. Her aunt stopped moving. "Well, what is it?" she demanded. Day didn't answer. He just stared at the bottom of the page, where his name sat above a bold printed notice. "Day?" Huyen stepped closer and touched his arm. He lifted his eyes to hers. For the first time since she had known him, she saw pure fear there. "It's a summons," he said quietly. "From the district court." The words punched the air from her chest. What?" Huyen asked. "Why?" "It's about something from years ago," he said. "Something I thought was finished." Her aunt clicked her tongue. "You have a case in court? What did you do, Dee?" The noise from outside faded completely. The wedding day, the laughter, the neighbors, it all seemed to belong to someone else. I should have told you sooner, Day said, folding the paper with unsteady hands. I kept waiting for the right moment. I didn't want to ruin things for you. Ruin what? Huyen asked, voice trembling. Ruin today or ruin us? He took a deep breath, like a man about to dive underwater. Before I came here, he started slowly, before I met you and Maya, I wasn't alone. I had a wife. The words didn't land at first. They just slid past Huyen's ears. I had a wife, as if they were meant for someone else. You were married, she repeated. Yes, he said, forcing himself to meet her eyes. We divorced. It was ugly. We fought a lot. I left and tried to leave that life behind. But now she's opened a new case. She says I abandoned my responsibilities, that I owe her, that I disappeared. Responsibilities? Her aunt cut in sharply. What responsibilities? Day's jaw tightened. We had a child, he said finally, a son. The room tilted. Huyen grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. You have a son, she whispered. Maya stared at him, eyes round. Uncle Day, you have another child? He turned to her, guilt thick in his face. Maya, you never told us. Huyen's voice rose, shaking. All this time living together, eating together, dreaming about this wedding, and you kept a whole family hidden? I wanted to tell you, he said quickly, so many times. But every time I tried, I saw you and Maya, and I was afraid. Afraid you'd see me as a bad man and send me away. I kept thinking, when things are more stable, when I can fix the past, then I'll tell them everything. So you waited until the court had to tell me for you? Huyen shot back. On our wedding day? Someone passing the doorway froze for a second, sensing trouble, then slipped away. Out here, rumors traveled faster than motorcycles. One broken ceremony and the whole village would be talking. Her aunt folded her arms tightly. So that son is your responsibility? You owe money? Is that why the court is calling you? Day nodded. She says I abandoned them, that I haven't paid what I promised after the divorce, that I ran off to hide. Is she lying? Huyen demanded. He hesitated. That pause spoke louder than words. I left, he admitted. I thought by walking away we could both start over. At first, I sent money whenever I could. Then work dried up. I came here with nothing. I told myself I'd make it up later when I had more, but later kept moving. And later has walked straight into my house today, her aunt said bitterly. Huyen's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. She thought of the hauling sacks from the forest, guiding Maya across rocky paths, sitting beside her by lamplight, counting coins. She thought she knew his whole story, from beginning to now. But there was a chapter she'd never even heard of. A wife, a son, a courtroom. The summons lay on the table like a small white stone between them. So what does this mean? She asked, voice hoarse. Do you have to go? Could you be arrested? What does it mean for us? For this wedding? For everything we've built? It means I have to face it, he said quietly. I don't know if it ends in jail or new debts or just more shame. I only know I can't keep pretending it's gone. The court won't let me forget, and neither should I. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Are you bad, Uncle D? She whispered, like the men they show on TV with handcuffs. He dropped to his knees in front of her. No, Maya, I made mistakes, big ones, but I am trying to be better. I swear I would never hurt you or your mother. But you lied, she said. wiping her nose with the back of her hand. That single sentence cut deeper than any legal paper. Outside, someone finally turned the speaker up. Wedding music, bright, a little distorted, floated into the room. It sounded wrong now, like it belonged to a different movie. Huyen looked at the doorway, at the bright clothes and curious faces gathering in her yard. In her mind, she could already hear the whispers if she called it off. Day has a hidden child. The groom has a court case. Huyen chose badly. Her chest tightened until breathing felt like work. I need to think, she said at last. I can't just walk out there, smile, take photos, and pretend nothing happened. Huyen, please, Day said, voice cracking. Don't end everything today. Give me a chance to tell you the whole story. No secrets, no excuses. I'll go to court. I'll face whatever comes. Just don't throw us away yet. She stared at him, torn clean down the middle. In front of her was the man who had helped pull her out of hunger and fear. Behind him was a past he hadn't trusted her with. Maybe that's the worst part, she answered quietly. The truth is here, but it's late. Huyen walked past him toward the door. The music, the chatter, the smell of food in the yard. They all felt strangely far, as if she were stepping into someone else's party. For the first time since Doe had appeared in her life, her faith in their shared future was shaken. In her mind, a single question echoed again and again. Was their love strong enough to survive the shadows he had never dared to show her? The song outside cut off mid-beat. Someone lowered the volume, sensing trouble. Huyen stepped into the yard, face pale. Is something wrong? A neighbor called. Her aunt forced a smile. Everyone, please eat first. We have a small issue with the papers. The ceremony will be a bit late. People laughed awkwardly, shuffled toward the food, but their eyes kept drifting to the doorway where Day stood, the white summons in his hand. Huyen turned to him. We're not getting married right now, she said quietly. I can't stand in front of everyone like nothing happened. He nodded. I understand. You said you'd tell me everything. You will, she added. Then I'll decide if I still want to be your wife. Her tone was soft, but it left no room to hide. By evening, the yard was empty. Inside, the oil lamp painted yellow circles on the wall. Day sat on one side of the table. Huyen and Maya sat on the other. The letter lay between them. Start from the beginning, Huyen said. Duh swallowed. Her name is Lan, he began. I married her in the city. I worked construction. We were poor and always tired. Then we had a son. I wasn't ready. He spoke in short, halting sentences. Long hours, small pay, constant bills, fights that went nowhere. The day he walked out with a backpack and told himself he'd come back when things were better. Did you? Huyen asked. No, he said. I sent money for a while. Then I lost work. I was ashamed. Every time I thought of calling, I imagined her shouting, the boy not knowing me. So I pushed it away. I told myself they were fine without me. Were they? She pressed. No, he admitted. That's why this letter exists. Maya's eyes shone. So, you have a son? Almost your age, Day said. I haven't seen him in 10 years. So when you came to our village, Huyen said slowly, you were running. Yes. And when you said you wanted a fresh start with me and Maya, you didn't say who you were leaving behind. He didn't defend himself. I was afraid, he said simply. Afraid you'd push me away if you saw that part. Huyen's fingers tightened. You were ready to put your name next to mine on a paper, she said, but your name is already on another paper you tried to forget. He flinched. I know. What will you do? she asked. I'll go to court, he said. Tell the judge I was wrong. If they order me to pay, I'll pay. I won't run again. And us? She asked. He looked at her, eyes tired. I still want a life with you, but I know you may not want that anymore. Maya whispered, if you say sorry, can they forgive you? I don't know, Day answered, but I have to try. A week later, the district court building rose low and yellow by the road. Huyen stood at the gate with Dee, heart heavy. You can wait outside, he said. No, she replied. If I'm deciding our future, I need to see you face your past. Inside, a clerk led them to a small room. A woman sat near the window, hands tight around her bag. Her hair was pulled back quickly, lines dug into her face. Line, Day said. She looked up. Her gaze jumped from him to Huyen. So this is the new one, she said. At least she came to hear with her own ears. Huyen bowed slightly. I'm Huyen, she said. I didn't know about you or your son. I wanted the truth, not rumors. Lan let out a dry laugh. The truth is simple, she said. He left. I raised our boy alone. He sent money sometimes, then stopped. Our son used to watch the road and ask if his father was coming. I had nothing to tell him. A court officer entered. They sat. The hearing was short. The judge read the file, asked a few questions. Dee admitted leaving, admitted that he stopped paying, admitted that he hid. I told myself I'd fix it when I was better, he said. I never got better. That's my fault. The judge set a repayment plan. Small monthly payments. No jail if he followed it. You cannot change the past, the judge said, but you can choose not to repeat it. In the corridor afterward, Lan turned to Dee. He's 12, she said. He knows your name. He also knows you never came. If you want to send money now, send it. If you want to see him, ask, but don't appear once and vanish. That hurts more than never showing up. I won't disappear again, Day said quietly. Lan looked at Huyen. You still want to marry him? I don't know, Huyen answered, but if I stay, it will be knowing the whole story. I won't pretend your son doesn't exist. For the first time, Lan's expression softened a little. At least you're not blind, she muttered, and left. Day let out a breath. This is your chance to walk away, he told Huyen. No guests, no altar. You can go back alone. Say it didn't work out. Huyen studied him. He looked smaller than on the wedding morning, but he wasn't hiding now. I can't pretend I don't love you, she said slowly. Love is easy. Living with everything attached to it, that's the hard part. He swallowed. So I'm not ready to marry you, she said. If we signed papers now, I'd be doing it with fear in my chest. That wouldn't be fair to anyone. His shoulders sagged. But I'm also not ready to let you go, she added. He blinked. What does that mean? It means we go home together, she said. We tell Auntie and Maya what happened. We send the first payment. We keep working. And I watch, not your promises, but what you do, month after month. And if I keep showing up? He asked. Then one day, she said, if I still see a man who stays when it's hard, maybe we'll stand under that banner again, not pretending the past never existed, but choosing to carry it together. She reached for his hand. It wasn't a vow, but it wasn't goodbye. They stepped out of the courthouse. The afternoon sun hit them full on. Their shadows stretched long on the ground, crossing and tangling. The debt, the hurt, the gossip waiting back in the village, none of it had vanished. But for the first time, Huyen felt that if their love survived from here on, it would be because they faced the truth, not because they hid from it. And that, she knew, was the only kind of love that had any real chance of lasting. Huyen and Dee are finally preparing for their simple village wedding when an unexpected letter arrives. The envelope is a court summons exposing Dee's buried past, a former wife, a son he left behind, and unpaid responsibilities. On what should have been their happiest day, Huyen's trust shatters as she realizes he has hidden an entire life from her. Instead of walking to the altar, they walk into the courtroom, where Dee must confess everything. Huyen listens as his ex-wife describes years of struggle, disappointment, and a child waiting for a father who never came. Faced with legal debts and emotional damage, Dee chooses to stop running and accept accountability. Huyen, torn between betrayal and love, postpones the wedding but does not abandon him. She decides to wait and watch his actions, testing whether their love can survive truth and responsibility.